All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my buddy Tim Karr. Tim is the campaign director at Free Press, which you can find at freepress.net. You can also find him on Twitter at Tim Karr. Tim, thank you so much for being on the show again.
It's always a pleasure, Matt.
All right, so Tim, not unlike a horrible zombie, the proposed bill CISPA is back, and it is frankly as horrible as ever. If people do not remember CISPA from when they tried to pass it the last time, explain to everybody what exactly is CISPA.
Well, CISPA is a bill that made it about halfway through Congress in the previous Congress, the previous session. And it stands for the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act. And as there have been elevated concerns about cyber terrorism and hackers and all these sorts of things, the government has decided that it needs to respond. And there's a whole raft of legislation. CISPA is just one among many efforts that are ongoing right now. And what it proposes is to give a lot of the companies that have information about people's use online, companies like Facebook and Twitter that are often subpoenaed for information. It gives them legal indemnity when the government comes knocking and asks them to hand over information about users. So it's dangerous in that respect, in that it doesn't really provide for a full due process for handing over customer information, and so it's as you've mentioned, it's like a zombie. It has lurched back to life in this new Congress, and we're also, a lot of the groups that fought it, groups like Free Press and ACLU and EFF in the past, are getting back together again to make sure that we can kill this bill this time around, or at least if we're not kill it, we amend it in ways that put our civil rights and protections for our civil rights in their proper place.
Yeah, what I love currently up at Free Press, you guys, I don't know who designed it, but you guys actually, somebody at your place actually did a graphic design of the Bill from the Schoolhouse Rock, I'm Just a Bill, and made a zombie version of him, which is pretty great. And so, okay, it's CISPA, it's a horrible bill, and it's back. Who's pushing it back? Who are the people that are really pushing to get this back and trying to pass this bill into law? Who are the main groups that are behind it?
Well, I think it's primarily motivated by government, by the NSA, and by the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Defense that are tasked with national security issues that are pushing it inside government. And this is where it's somewhat different than the kind of efforts that we fought in the past that people will remember. In 2011, in 2012, there was a mass mobilization to fight copyright legislation, what was called PIPA and SOPA, and that coalition is not really the same coalition that is fighting CISPA, because a lot of the companies that were involved in protecting our user rights and the issue of copyright aren't that engaged. And here you had companies like Twitter and Facebook that were opposed to PIPA and SOPA, but they are actually the ones that would benefit in this case from CISPA, because it does give them legal clarity and indemnifies them the next time that they get subpoenaed to hand over a customer account. And so in this case, they are not counted on to be part of the coalition that would fight CISPA, because it does benefit them. So it's in many ways, and it's a little more problematic from the organizer's perspective, from the perspective of organizations like Free Press, to build a coalition to fight this. Although we do have, again, good groups like ACLU and EFF, which have been, stalwarts when it comes to protecting our rights online, who are part of this coalition.
What's kind of crazy about CISPA is that pretty much it's another one of these bills that is, to me, it seems really, really poorly written and poorly designed. It's also, it seems unnecessary because there are means of getting information if absolutely is necessary. It's called, you get a subpoena, and you actually, there are methods of actually doing this stuff. But what it seems to me is that the government kind of wants really ease of access into getting all types of all types of our data, our personal data. And once that door is open, it's really, the floodgates fly open, and it could be really, really awful for what the government could possibly have as far as our private personal data goes.
Yeah, and one of the issues right now is that there's a great deal of legal uncertainty in this new realm of cyber intelligence and cyber terrorism and social media. There's a great deal of legal uncertainty as to what protections we have and what we don't have. And when you have these kind of threats out there like CISPA, it has this other effect. It has this sort of chilling effect on our free speech issues. I mean, people are much more reluctant to express themselves using the modern day platforms for free speech. Platforms like Twitter and like Facebook is where millions, and if you believe Facebook's number, billions of people are now communicating. And when you have the government given carte blanche, basically, to get into our accounts and pull our personal information, it has that kind of chilling effect on free speech, which is a real concern for free press.
So where is this bill legislatively? So it is currently being re-upped in the House, correct?
Yes. It was stalled last year in the Senate, and now supporters have introduced the House version in this new Congress. And so it's just been introduced. It's going through that process of what you see with most legislation, and it may go up for a hearing. There'll be a lot of lobbyists on both sides of the issue, meeting with their members of Congress, and of course, since we're a grassroots organization, we're reaching out to the public to get involved by writing to their members of Congress and telling them to protect our rights.
Who is it that's actually pushing it in the Senate right now? Does it look like it has a decent shot of passing the Senate, or how is the actual vote count stacking up on a first glance?
It's too early right now to really have those numbers to figure out where members of Congress stand. And as soon as we do get that information, we'll be making it available to people, because it's one thing to tell your average Jane or Joe activist to call their member of Congress and say, we don't like this legislation, but it's important that you also know where your member of Congress stands, and if he or she is actively against CISPA or wants to amend it so that it's better, it's good to know that, so you can actually call them and say thank you and continue the good fight. And if they are on the other side of the issue, they're pushing for its passage, we would want you to call them and criticize them. So as soon as we have more detailed information on where individual members of Congress stand on this, we'll make that available to people so they can call if they like, or write a letter and personalize it in a way so that that member of Congress knows that we're following them pretty closely.
And before we move on, last time when CISPA tried to go through, President Obama actually threatened to veto it. Do we have any word from the president so far on this? I know this is the very beginning of this process, but what do we have? Do we have hope that he would still stick to that, or is there any inclination that his tendencies have changed on this?
We're getting really mixed messages from the White House. I think on the one hand, there are advisors from his national security apparatus who are telling him that he's got to really push this through. And then on the other hand, he is responsive to the public on this, and if he sees that there is enough of a public outcry out there, he may buck the opinion of his national security officials, or at least do something to try to amend this. And last time, when the last version of this bill was going through Congress, he did say that he would veto it if it didn't have sufficient civil liberties protections in it. So we're hoping that we can establish that standard with him again and have him draw the line.